Beside the rivers in Nepal, there grows a strange and beautiful tree. Scientists call it bombax, silk cotton. Travellers by sea knew it as the producer of the stuffing of old-style life jackets, the kapok tree. It grows all around the tropics, and everywhere it's a life preserver for a wide variety of animals. When the river floods, the danger for the trees on the bank is serious. But when fire strikes, strangely enough, it's the means of survival for the life preserver. The fires may be caused naturally by lightning, or they may be set deliberately by local cattle owners. In both cases, the effect is to burn off the old grass and allow the new shoots to spring up. If the grass is allowed to establish itself, it forms a dense mat covering the ground, which will prevent the kapok seedlings from taking root. Other inhabitants of the riverbank find the fire an advantage too, like drongos. Drongos are flycatchers, common in tropical Africa as well as in the Indian subcontinent. They gather round the blaze to feed on insects driven out of the grass by the heat. The kapok tree is fire resistant with its thick, spongy bark. But grass fires are a major cause of death to tortoises and other ground-living animals. If the fire burns too fiercely and too long, even some of the kapok trees will die. In the south of Nepal, the trees grow along the banks of the rivers on the fertile soil of the floodplain. They form what's called riverine forest, a typical Nepalese habitat. Nepal's northern boundary is high in the Himalayas, but in the south, the country is flat and low-lying. Royal Chitwan National Park is a preserved area of grassland and jungle. Where the Narayani River winds through the park, it is bordered by a forest of kapok trees. The trees produce their flowers in January, when the river is placid during the dry season. Each flower is the size of a coffee cup, with a large supply of sweet nectar, and the trees produce them by the thousand. Insects are few at this time of year. It's winter, and the nectar attracts few bees, but plenty of other animals. These are grey langurs. The langurs eat the flowers and buds too, and their effect on the trees is mostly destructive. Kapok flowers are a rich and valuable source of food for the monkeys at this time of year. People's attitudes to animals often differ. To outsiders, the grey-bearded monkeys are attractive, even beautiful to watch. But to the Nepalese, they're sacred. That's why they tolerate the langurs' aerial raids on valuable fruit trees, as well as on kapok. Langurs live in sociable family groups, scouring the forest for their food. Because they move on after a day or so, they don't completely destroy the tree's flower production for the season. The rhesus macaque uses the kapok trees too. It's not so destructive as the langurs, seldom actually eating the flowers, but more often just drinking the sugary nectar. In doing so, the macaques pollinate the flowers. The kapok trees must be one of the few plants regularly pollinated by mammals other than bats. Another active pollinator is the five-striped palm squirrel. The big, juicy flowers stay on the trees for about 3 weeks until they've attracted something to pollinate them. Then the nectar supply will dry up and the flowers will begin to die. All this time, there are no leaves on the tree, so that the flowers shine out like beacons across the forest. They also attract birds, a black-headed oriole and a yellow-naped woodpecker. The birds play their part in pollinating the kapok flowers too, carrying the pollen from one to another as they make their rounds in search of nectar. A lineated barbet. The name barbet means bearded. It refers to the bristles round the bird's bill, which act as very efficient carriers of pollen. Like the kapok tree itself, the barbets are widespread all round the tropics. So too are bulbuls in Africa and here in the Indian subcontinent. This is the red-whiskered bulbul. The rose-ringed parakeet and the jungle myna appear to be fairly amicable at this time of year, but later on they will become rivals as they compete for nesting places in these very trees. While the flowers are out, the birds make the most of them. They need to gather as much nectar as they can whilst it's there, because in February and early March, the flowers will begin to fall as the tree enters the next phase of its annual cycle. The dropping of the flowers indicates that the fruits are beginning to develop. The fallen blossoms provide a bonus for spotted and hog deer in the grassland below the trees. By March, the trees that were scorched by fires earlier in the year are showing signs of recovery from their ordeal. March is the time of growing leaves, and even apparently dead trees respond with renewed vitality as the sap rises. The leaves often spring straight from the blackened trunk, as well as growing in the more usual position on the branches. By April, the trees are spreading their canopies to the sun, building up the energy supplies depleted by the flowering season. The fruits are developing too, and soon the kapok, the silk cotton, is blowing in the wind. The trees present a wonderful sight at this stage, covered with snowballs in the sunshine. The kapok itself has an important function as a means of dispersing the seeds. This steady snowfall in May is a memorable sight for travellers to South Nepal, taking place under the clear blue skies of the dry season, the Nepalese spring. Each clump of silk cotton contains a seed to spread the kapok trees across the riverine area. The local people gather up the kapok to fill warm linings for jackets or quilted coverlets for cool nights. At one time, the kapok was commercially valuable as an export crop for insulation and for making life jackets, but now it has been replaced by synthetics. The villagers have used it for centuries, patiently teasing out the hard seeds from their silky parachutes. The village women discard the seeds, but to some other local residents, the seeds are the best part of the tree. They're stainer bugs, brightly coloured but quite harmless, and they time their breeding season to coincide with the kapok blizzards. Mating pairs crawl all over the snowdrifts, the females dragging the males about in search of a good place to lay their eggs. The eggs hatch into tiny red bugs, which feed on the kapok seeds. Some seeds survive all this to germinate. They're only just in time. June marks the start of the monsoon rains. In the riverine areas of southern Nepal, the monsoon is a time of change. Not only the plant and animal life, but the very geography of the area will be affected. The power of the flooded river is a force to be reckoned with. For the people who live here, the monsoon floods can be a time of great hardship as they try to travel across the level plain. The rivers change their courses, tearing at their banks. They also take their toll of the kapok trees too. The wet weather brings a bonus for the jungle miners. As the water floods ants' nests underground, birds make a meal of the homeless insects. The monsoon season lasts 4 months, from June to September. For humans and animals alike, it's a time of damp discomfort. But without it, the forest wouldn't be here. The wet season brings a flush of growth to the flat land along the river banks. Orchids blossom in great profusion, drawing their nourishment either from within the trees or from the sodden moss on their branches. When the rains end in September, the riverbanks are littered with bleaching trunks, the corpses of drowned trees. Among the kapok trees which still stand, a safe distance from the river, lives a strange creature called a vine snake. Its curiously shaped head gives it accurate forward vision along grooves in its nose, and its slender, lightweight body moves easily amongst the thinnest branches. Its prey consists of small birds, especially tree-living species like the bush chat. Adults can usually fly before the snake reaches them. Most of its victims are young birds, which are still learning to fly. Nesting places are provided by holes in the kapok tree's soft trunk. The spongy wood is easy to dig into, and several of Nepal's forest birds take advantage of it. The rose-ringed parakeet is one of them. But although the parakeet can enlarge an existing hole, it can't dig one from scratch. Only woodpeckers can do that. Most of the forest birds live in second-hand holes, and the competition for them is intense. A barred owlet is among the birds which nest in woodpecker holes. Miners will invade other birds' nests to steal the eggs or to eat the young birds, and often to take the site over for themselves. Other species are very wary of them. Jungle miners with chicks to feed are extremely defensive of a nest hole which they've taken over. Among the other hole nesters is the Indian roller, a large and very handsome species of insect eater. The roller will eat small birds as well, especially if it finds them in an unguarded hole suitable for its own family. All the birds that nest in the kapok tree have to guard their holes from dawn to dusk, such is the pressure of competition. The birds that made most of the holes, the woodpeckers, come under frequent attack. While one parent is out gathering food, the other stays behind to guard the nest. Nepal has over 20 different species of woodpecker living in its forests. This is the fulvous-breasted pied woodpecker. It too has to watch out for jungle miners in search of nesting spaces. Emerging to fetch more food is never safe, and a woodpecker always waits until its mate is standing by to take over guard duty. Even a rose-ringed parakeet will make a brief challenge. These parakeets spend a lot of their time courting and preening each other. The branches of the kapok tree support colonies of bio-weavers, birds which build their nests during the monsoon so that their young can feed well on the flush of insects immediately afterwards. The males alone do the building, meticulously weaving strands of grass together to make a sturdy coconut-shaped nest. It's a process similar to sewing, as they poke the ends in and then pull them through to the other side. Not all the material is fresh. Males frequently steal from neighbouring nests. When the nest is complete, the proud owner advertises it with a fluttering display intended to attract females. By September, when the kapok trees are in full leaf, they once more attract parties of grey langurs, this time to feed on the leaves and on the buds of next winter's flowers. The langurs demonstrate the value of the kapok trees to so many of Nepal's forest creatures. They share the wealth of food too. When they accidentally drop bunches of leaves to the ground, less agile creatures can eat them. As the langurs carry on their social activities high in the kapok trees, the season wears on towards mid-winter and the blooming of a new generation of flowers. For all the animals that live in them, the trees provide an important source of food and shelter in their leaves, fruits and seeds, and in the flowers themselves. The leaves die off as December approaches to make way for the blossom. As the flowers open, exposing their nectar to the animals, their red and orange petals seem to reflect the fire that is essential to the tree's continuing dominance of the riverside forest. Whether it's called kapok, silk cotton, or its formal name of bombax, this tree is a life preserver, a vital part of the ecology of the riverbanks of southern Nepal.
Well, no Dragon's Tail tomorrow night, but it's back on Monday when we travel to India to observe the wildlife on a Maharaja's lake.